Well, I'm going to try to cover this as quick as possible. This would be the Ignite Out announcements, and then we can go right into panel and let the panel experts talk to some of these. The first thing I always love to talk about is the Book of News. This is really your single source of all the announcements that happen at Ignite. So I'll go ahead and somebody will probably drop the link in the chat so you have access yourself. But let me just kind of talk you through what the Book of News is. It's a compilation of every core area inside of Microsoft and the latest feature that was announced at Ignite. How I tend to use it is I go right into the table of contents, and then I go to the area that I work in. My space is M365 Copilot. You might even want to check out Modern Work. Those are the two spaces that I'm going to kind of talk through today. So as you can see, quite a lot has been announced. And then, of course, agents has its own category. So as you learned about agents from Don in the Message Center updates, there's a lot of things happening in that space. So getting, I guess, up to date on the latest features is really a good idea. So go through the agents and go through all the different announcements from Copilot. And then, like I said, I tend to focus then right down here on the modern workspace to see what are the new capabilities that are happening in Teams, because we're still developing on Teams, as you probably know. There's some really cool things that are happening there. So I've got a few slides I'm going to share, and then, of course, I'll turn it over to the experts so they can weigh in on things that they found that were really interesting. And I'll go ahead and share my slides here. And it should be popping up for you. Okay. So I'll do it fast and furious, and this is all recorded, so you can always slow it down once we hit it on YouTube. But basically, the big announcement is the new UI for AI is Copilot, as you know. We do it in 3 flavors right now through BizChat. That's that Copilot app that actually has 5 different access points. It has the web. It has, obviously, a Teams app, which you'll find in the chat being pinned up for you. We have a mobile version of it. And so forth. Then we have Pages, which is something we announced and have actually talked about. I've delivered the session on what is Loop. I believe it was last year or even the year before here. You'll probably find it on our YouTube channel. That's basically the integration of Copilot and Loop is what we call Copilot Pages. It's a really cool capability to be able to, and we announced this, I believe, at Wave 2, which was in early October, where you go ahead and prompt Copilot, and then you get this little button that says Edit in Pages. And really what this allows you to do is take the result of your prompt, put it into Loop, and inside of Loop, you can then keep on expanding. You can add people into Loop for collaboration. You can make a page. You can then put it in a workspace and share that out more broadly, and just really reiterating and regenerating different things, going back from Copilot, bringing it again into Pages and making a really rich experience. And of course, now we have actions, and actions I think is going to be really important because it's going to help you if you're not a prompt engineer or you're new to Copilot. It's going to give you just easy things that you can start with. So we have a lot of really great announcements that's going to help speed up the process of getting really the results back from some of your prompting. All right, I'm going to then move into a few of the other announcements here. As you can see, we've got, let me make sure it, there we go, it goes forward. All right, so actions, you heard a little bit about this, but those are the abilities for you. I think that the back end is really that automation piece. So doing repetitive tasks in Copilot, checking in maybe with stakeholders, getting a status update, maybe creating a scheduled end of day briefing. So those things, instead of having to go into Copilot to do, you can actually just schedule them, which is really saves you a lot of time, having that just pop up for you, and then you can go ahead and go throughout your day. Right now it's in private preview, so we're doing some of that inside testing. I believe it's scheduled for probably Q1. Obviously, it's not going to happen, I think, this month. But what we normally do is go from private preview to then public preview, and then to general availability. So it's going through that iterative testing right now. But I would definitely look at all the announcements and check out actions, because it's going to be, I think, a really powerful part of the Copilot adoption journey. All right, next we have Copilot pages, like I mentioned. So this is that capability to say edit in the page, takes everything that you prompted, puts it into loop. You can then even go back to Copilot, ask it something else, take that result and put it in the same exact loop page, invite people to it. They do not need to have a Copilot license. That's the cool thing about that, is that you can pull anybody in, because what you're doing is basically just doing a loop share, right? A component or a page share, and then they can start editing together and working on the result of your prompt and the next prompts that you added in there. Oh, did I give you the timeline on that? Yeah, that is available today. So go check that out if you do have a Copilot license and you're leveraging Loop. But what is actually not there today, but was announced at Ignite, is this new rich experience. So we call them artifacts, but basically they are pie charts. They're the things that you use in Excel today to show more of a storytelling about your data. So bringing in those artifacts, whether that's tables, pie charts, and so forth, being able to bring in diagrams to tell the story a little bit richer, that is coming out in Q1 2025. So look for that. It's just going to be a richer experience inside of the Loop pages when you're leveraging Copilot. We have a lot of announcements about Copilot and Outlook, prioritizing your inbox. That's going to be coming out. Private preview is next month. That's an automatic capability. So you can go in there and you can prioritize and have it quickly analyze the top things that are important to you. Now, how does it know that? It knows that by the trends of people you communicate with, or by the frequent emails that you get from a certain person. So based on the topic, keyword, or people, it's going to create a prioritization for you. The next one that I'm really excited is scheduling one-on-one and focus time, where you can just simply ask Copilot, hey, I want to set up a meeting between maybe Don and I next Friday. And it then will look at his calendar and my calendar automatically and suggest time. So really, I think exciting. That's taking that find time that we used to do, or whatever capability that you had where you had to look at the calendars, look between everything, and just automate that process, making it super easy. The next one, Copilot can actually help you draft agendas inside of Outlook. So you can say, hey, this is the goal of the meeting, draft me an agenda, and we're looking to accomplish this by this date or something. It will then create that agenda for you. So before you even send out a meeting invite, the agenda is already written out. So saving you, again, more time. A lot of these, that's GA December, schedule and drafting agendas. So it looks like it should be coming. If not, as you know, as we do the Message Center updates, and there's always an updated area when times shift a little bit. So I say December because it says December, but it could be January. So just note it's a little more fluid. All right, next we have Copilot and Excel. There's two big announcements here, is that we're unlocking new capabilities by Copilot and Excel with Python. So if you leverage Python, that is something that you can start using today. It was announced as GA at Ignite. And then the next one is a new start experience. So if you ever open up an Excel spreadsheet and you want to get going, but you're not sure, gosh, what are all the columns I need? Just ask Copilot, like, hey, I'm going to create a budget report for 2025, and it will just come up with those for you. So think of it like in Word, where it creates a first draft. It's going to do the same thing as a new start experience in Excel. So that is a new cool capability. It's kind of like bringing templates automatically into the Excel space. All right, next we have Copilot and PowerPoint. If you haven't heard, it's really cool. You've got Narrative Builder. And basically you can say, hey, create a presentation about this, or create a presentation about this, looking at this file, right? A Word document. And what will happen is this Narrative Builder comes up on top of PowerPoint and puts in a section by section. Actually, when you generate it slide by slide, but it's putting in different topics in order that you can then change, regenerate, remove, whatever you want. So it creates a preview for you that then you can go back in and alter and then hit generate. So you can kind of see it before it actually gets laid out. So that's some cool capability. We also have presentation translation. So in the sidecar, so when I say the sidecar, when you hit Copilot in the ribbon in PowerPoint, a little side panel will come out. And let's say you're looking at this, but you have to send it to maybe a different audience. You can go ahead and say, hey, translate this whole presentation up to 40 different languages. A little dialog box will come up. You can click on the arrow and select the language that you want it to be translated to, and it will automatically translate all of your slides. So really cool. Again, trying to make your life easier, not having to use maybe another tool or maybe another platform. All right, we have places. We've mentioned places before here at the user group. Basically, it's a workplace app, and it's going to reimagine how you book, you manage rooms and desks inside of this application. So it will do things like recommend in-office days based on people that you work with or scheduled meetings. It'll also do space analytics. So that is available right now, general availability. All right, Teams experiences. So this is kind of fun because you've got Copilot and Teams can source information from screen shared content. And that sounds like kind of crazy, right? Because all you're doing is like you're sharing right now, we're sharing information on a PowerPoint slide. If you go into Copilot, you can say, hey, what is, the announcement about screen shared content? It will regurgitate everything that's on the slide for you. So it can read all this content, whether I spoke about it or not. As you can see, I'm skipping things. It may just call out other things that I didn't talk about. Really cool stuff. Then there's new file summaries and one-on-one and group chats where you can quickly summarize. So it's bringing, I think this piece, yeah, it's also available on mobile, file summaries and one-on-one and group chats. So you're now able to ask Copilot, maybe you're having a project conversation and you've been out and there's a huge long thread and it's hard to get back, and we all know it as you got to read and go up and then miss some of the things. You can go, hey Copilot, just give me a summary of the last day of what people were sharing, as well as a file summary, and say, hey, give me a summary of the file that was shared. So that's kind of fun. And then with Translated Intelligent Meeting Recap, you can get generate recaps in a translation language that was selected for the meeting. So all these are public preview. They all look like they're coming out about Q1 2025. So fun stuff there. All right, new Teams experiences. So not just Copilot, but new Teams. This is really cool. We are putting basically the chat and channel experiences, so the Teams app and the channel app, bringing that together to one place. So you don't have to go into another location. As we know, context switching is really draining. So this is a really great way, I think, a new experience. Check it out. I think it's just right now a toggle that you can take a look at if you have that available. It's in public preview. I think everybody's been asking, when are we going to get a new updated version of our Teams calendar? And they are rolling that in. It's an opt-in experience, but it has more of the Outlook for Windows, Outlook for web experiences. Includes some of the Copilot skills for time management. It's also bringing in the Microsoft Places app into that experience. And then, of course, Storyline and Teams. This is a Viva Engage feature that you are able to now follow updates of storylines, people that you follow. Maybe they're your leader in your company, maybe they're your manager. It's going to be in that activity feed. So there's nothing you need to do. It just, now you're going to see, if you do leverage Viva Engage, the folks that are in your company that use Storyline, you'll be able to see Storyline in your activity feed. So keeping it all within Teams, just a richer experience. All right, Copilot in OneNote, I'll just cover real quick. It will do multimodal notes. So now you can organize your notes, not only just a current, organizing your current section and giving you that summary, but you can refine it and revise and also apply updates with a single single click. So that means in a meeting, maybe you thought you took good notes, but hey, ask Copilot to rearrange it or make more sense. Because sometimes we type too fast or whatever the case might be. Copilot in OneNote can help you kind of rearrange and make more sense out of what maybe you might have written. And again, available in public preview by the end of 2024. So look for Q1 probably as that gets added into OneNote. Biggest announcement, I hope I'm not stealing any of the panel experts' latest feature or highlighted feature, but to me, this is definitely one of mine. SharePoint Advanced Management. Basically, it's governance controls that we've been always wanting to have within SharePoint. They are now getting automatically added if you have a license for M365 Copilot. Which that means is that now you can do reports and look for the oversharing concerns that your organization might have. We call that the built-in governance with Copilot. So that's doing a lot of things like reducing content sprawl, content control over the oversharing. So running all these reports is really good just for good governance. But the fact that now SAM, we call it, is being added is going to be that much more of a richer experience. So you can put more control and, of course, get rid of some of that low-hanging fruit of too many things that have been shared over the years. All right, now the out-of-the-box agents. There's many agents here. I put timelines on all of these so you can see those. There's, I think, a lot of rich things that are going to happen. Not only can you create custom agents, but we've built them for you. I think of these as a little bit like app templates that we created when Teams rolled out. These are just help to guide you in having richer experiences within Copilot. So you've got Facilitator that's going to automatically start just putting together your meeting notes and your agenda for you as you're in a meeting. Interpreter, which is really, really super interesting. I might have a slide on this. I'm trying to get through it quick. But basically, say you're in a multilingual meeting and somebody is talking in Spanish, you can go ahead and say, change the translation and put it in the language that maybe I speak, and I speak English. So put it into English. While the person's talking in Spanish, it will then use their voice and change it to English and speak in real time for you. That's just straight out of, I don't know, Star Trek or something. It's pretty cool to see. That is coming, public preview Q1 2025. It might have even hit like one of the keynotes at Ignite. So if you were looking for it, that's what the interpreter agent's going to do. Project Manager, that's all about Planner. That's going to be great capabilities where you can have Planner in Copilot create a plan for you based on your goals and your timeline of things that you want to accomplish. So just a little project manager help while you're in Planner. Employee self-service agent, it's a limited private preview, not coming up for some time, but that's going to be where you can talk to the self-service capability like HR and having really a robust experience by saying, hey, I need some help as an employee, and using that agent to get to whatever your needs might be just for employee needs. And of course, we've got agents in SharePoint. There's probably a lot of conversation about what that might mean. Basically, it's taking a document library and saying, or a site and saying, hey, I want to create an agent where I can just have virtual chat with this SharePoint site. It's really cool. I know I simplified that, but think of, we've got in Copilot, we've got these large language models. I think of agents in SharePoint as small language models. So that's kind of how I tend to differentiate them. All right, I'm going to keep going. I think this is it. I believe this is one of the last slides or second. Now, Copilot Lab, you probably have heard of it for some time. We've been adding like prompts to it, creating this library. We're now rebranding and saying it's now the Copilot Prompt Gallery. But we're doing also really useful things, which is giving you the ability to bookmark it, to share it with your team so you can easily find and reuse the prompts. Also coming out with new prompt collections, so tailored to different groups and departments, and of course sharing your prompts for a better experience, whether that's sharing with your user or sharing with an already existing team. And this is the Copilot control system, product capabilities. I think I highlighted the majority of them here with SAM. Viva Insights is also a huge one, including M365 Copilot. And then we have a new Copilot Business Impact Report. That's going to be helping with those adoption change teams that are rolling out Copilot to see what the KPIs and that they're matching with the user sentiment or the user needs within your company. So with that, I'm going to be done. I know there's probably other pieces like Copilot Analytics. There's a really cool slide here that is like, hey, I want to go back to Ignite and figure out what did I miss. This slide is also super useful. I'll put it in the chat when we're done. And hopefully that's a mouthful, but I covered majority of those highlights. And now I love to turn it over to the panel of experts to just have discussion on all the capabilities, their favorite ones, what they learned at Ignite, things that maybe I didn't share, because I'm just covering kind of that high level. And I'll go ahead and have everybody else turn on your camera if you're on the panel, and love to deep dive into this.
Is everybody's brains just exploding from the sheer number of announcements?
Pretty much.
Right, Wes? Yeah, can't everyone turn on cameras? Absolutely.
Yeah, let's not do that, Wes. Not for now.
What?
All right. We are going to use Spotlight. Give me a second to get up there. Where is everybody else?
Stephanie!
Were you able to find me now, Don?
Hey, there
I'm
you go.
hoping I will be able to, since you have your camera on, I think. And I saw Richard. There's Richard. Teams is being temperamental today. Where's Max? Oh, and by the way, so we did ask Max to come on, even though he's not an MVP. He's got things to say, and I think it'd be good for him to be a part of this panel. So
he's still
He's got
Max.
opinions, yeah.
We still think of him as an MVP.
Opinions.
Right.
I don't have those.
Exactly. Well, thank you for jumping on and being and willing to be a part of the panel for today. What I want to do first is I just want our attendees to know you just a little bit more. So if you could just talk a little bit about yourself, give us your name, of course, what's your day job, and what things interest you around the Microsoft 365 side of things. So we're going to start with Stephanie. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do daily.
Yeah. Am I spotlighted? I can't tell.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So hi, everyone. Stephanie Donahue. I am the U.S. Modern Work Practice Lead at Avanade, and I sit in Cincinnati, Ohio, Microsoft MVP and Regional Director. And I've spent most of the last 2 years on Copilot. So excited to talk about those announcements today, and glad to be here. So thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thanks, Stephanie. Richard, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Richard Bryntenson. I'm on the back end of bronchitis right now, so
no.
if I start coughing, I'll hit mute as fast as I can. I'm here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, also MVP, Modern Work, and my focus is Teams voice, Teams conference rooms, Teams collaboration, if it has the word Teams in it. I suppose Teams and Copilot now it's required. Anything to do with Teams. It's pretty much what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I work a company out of Colorado called T2M Works.
All right. Thanks, Richard.
Yep.
Wes?
I'm Wes Preston. I'm also here in Minneapolis. MVP in M365, really around lists and things like that, productivity, and Power Apps now. So that's kind of cool. I organize one of the other local groups that has events locally, community days, etc. Been around forever. And we also have, I'm the guy who's organizing the coffee crew that we'll be having on Friday. So if you're in the area and can make that, be great to see you for networking and what have you. Max looks like he doesn't know about it and he needs to add it to his schedule. Also a regional leader for MGCI. So kind of the community days stuff and trying to help other people run events and start them and all that fun stuff. So
Cool.
I've been around. Ping me.
You want to put that Friday link?
Yeah, I put it in earlier, but I'll put it in.
Oh, did you? Okay, perfect. All right, Max, you're up.
Hey everybody, Max Fritz, also local here in Minneapolis, sitting right now in our wonderful Edina Innovation Hub, MTC. I work at Microsoft. I am a product manager on our education team, working on a bunch of M365 Copilot wonderfulness and goodness for EDU. Before my time at Microsoft, I used to be on this wonderful user group board and was in the consulting space working on Office 365 stuff.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for that part of it. So, Michelle spent a little bit of time on the modern work and team side. Copilot obviously is a big part of it. And if anybody's tracking, I'm not sure how many times we've said that word so far. But what I really want to get is out of the things that you guys went from a session perspective. What was your thoughts overall as far as the information that was coming out of Ignite this year? Obviously, we hear a lot of generative AI is a big part of it, but what was your thoughts, and especially how does that apply to your customers and the people that you're talking to daily? Because a lot of us have customers that we work with, right? So, big picture thoughts. What are the things that you're thinking right now after big picture of Ignite? Anybody want to start?
I'll jump in. So my thoughts are that we finally have a product in Copilot that's maturing. I think I felt, at least a lot of our customers felt, it was this very like MVP level, like got pushed out right away before it was fully baked kind of product, which is normal, right, for Microsoft, I think. But this year, we have the Copilot control system. We have Copilot admin page in the admin center. We have all these security controls that are now out. So it finally feels like something that is mature enough that we have those security boundaries in place that we can really start to lean in now. And even our more skeptical customers are finally able to take a look and say, yeah, it's got all of the checks and balances in place now for us to really lean into this. So I think that that's pretty exciting that we have all of these things in place around the really fantastic technology that Copilot is.
Great. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Richard, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would agree on the Copilot. The thing, when I've talked to a bunch of people, the one thing I did get a feeling for is it felt like last year we talked about Copilot, it wasn't ready, but Microsoft kind of also, there's like daily pain points that weren't being addressed, and it wasn't Copilot stuff like Teams features and other stuff like that. So it felt like everything was so Copilot last year that we forgot all the day-to-day pain points. Whereas this year, I felt like there was a lot of little announcements that came along the way that people have been asking for that really do check a lot of boxes that they've been worried about for years. So I think it was that maturity part, but I also think it was the acknowledgement that, right, like it isn't just Copilot, that we do need to talk about more than just that, although we have said Copilot a lot already.
And to that, Michelle did at 108 a Copilot on Copilot and said 82 times. So
right,
I'm pretty sure we're over at 100 at this point. So anyways,
probably
yes. But that's a great point, right? And I felt like last Ignite, well, that's all it was. That big enough, but everything was going on. But then to Stephanie's point, the maturity starting, the second wave, third wave of things are really starting to come out now, and the things that people have been really talking about, they've been wanting, right, is really now starting to come in. And some of those things are like we didn't know we wanted, but now we want it, have been part of that as well. So, Wes, what's your thoughts? Because I'm looking at your face as you're going through some of that stuff. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I don't want to say I'm pessimistic. I think there's still, it's taken a step forward for sure. There's more stuff to chew on. There's more stuff to get our hands on. I still think it's early in the process where I'm hesitant to go in with like here's your enterprise approach to how you're going to use Copilot. I think it's still in a, you do need to step into it, and you do need to kind of have at least a subset of people get, wrap their arms around it, because it's going to be there. I think it's established that much for sure. But I'm still pretty I'm still hesitant at saying, here's how you should do it, because it's changing so fast and there's so much more coming. And to the positive side of that, I think it's got enough momentum where I think we all know it is coming and it will be part of the platform. And the more you learn now, the better. But I think when it comes to that bigger picture of what's the plan and how are we going to use it as an organization, how do we get our user adoption stuff in line, how do we do training in line, that kind of stuff, that's still going to be in progress for probably a while. So I think it's great step forward. I'm less about the marketing and more about the using it day to day. And it's partially because my hesitancy is also partially because my focus is on things like lists and Power Apps where there's not a lot there yet. There's not a lot around lists. And in Power Apps, it's really the Copilot stuff is really around if you're using Dataverse and the Huron Power Platform stuff rather than the merging between M365 and the Power Platform. So generally positive, but I'm also hesitant and what have you. So that's my 10 cents.
Yeah, Richard, I think, and I agree with what you said in chat. The vast majority of our customers are not on Copilot or ready to pull the trigger yet.
Yep.
And actually, that's one of the questions I want to get to. Let's talk about that. But I want Max's opinion on what's been saying here, or even the fact of what did you hear from Ignite this year that you think it's really important for customers to really understand or people to understand as they're looking at this?
Yeah, obviously Copilot. And if I'm gonna pick something in that realm, sorry, I had to add to the transcript there. It is the Copilot analytics, which, as we're talking about this being more mature and more ready for people to actually start using, let's be real, $30 a month is a lot to cough up.
Mm-hmm.
You better be getting the bang for your buck. And I'm really happy that there's at least some forward momentum in a way for you to measure that. Do I think Copilot Analytics is perfect? No, it's not. But it is a step in the right direction of, okay, do you want to dip your toes in the water and actually see what this is going to do for you? I think Copilot Analytics actually starts to help a customer be able to understand how it's being used without having to go through 50 different reporting tools and platforms, because we all know that there are so many different things across the board.
Yeah.
Putting aside Copilot, the thing I'm most excited for, because it's actually changed how I work, is the chats and channels combined view for Teams.
Mm-hmm.
Because, boy, now that is my primary communications tool for the past 4 years, the organization system was quite lacking. And it took me a long time for people who are just starting to try private and public preview right now, hear me loud and clear. It takes a long time to get adjusted to it and to get everything sorted and categorized right. But once you get it down, like organizing your Outlook for the first time, it makes a measurable change in how you communicate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think because we're Microsoft employees, we've had access to it for months and having to understand that. And I think as it's getting rolled out, I'm not sure how many of the MVPs you guys have it in your tenants that you're using. It's a learning curve. And I think that's one of the things. That's another adoption change management point, huge adoption change management point that needs to be addressed before it comes out. But I agree, Max. I think that was a big thing outside of that Copilot side of things that I think it's great. I think it's going to be a good way.
And importantly, it's not going to be for everybody. There are going to be people who don't want to go to that experience and then don't. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. But there are certain people who I'll call the power users who it's probably going to benefit you.
Yeah, long term. So going back to Copilot and some of the things you're talking about, I know, Richard, you had thrown in that I've asked you, a lot of your customers have not even thought about it. Is that based off of size? Is it based off of that willingness to get into something new? Are they waiting? What kind of things are you guys seeing out there with those customers that are not necessarily going into the Copilot realm yet?
I think for us, it's a combination of things. I think one is, it's already been put in the notes or the chat, right? Like the prepayment on the front end is a
Yep.
big ask.
It is.
And
Mhm.
there's a lot of organizations that don't want to take that risk. The other thing is we're seeing a lot more organizations take and jump into the Teams Premium right now so that they can get the AI notes and the stuff inside the meetings.
Yep.
So it's kind of like this, I don't have to spend as much, I don't have to give it to everyone, but I get some of the feel and the functionality still. So it's kind of like a baby step in the right direction almost.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing.
Gateway
from our
drug,
side.
if you want to think of it that way.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think I also have customers that have gone down that route. They wanted to see how it looks. What is AI generation, summaries, and those types of things really help with my organization. If they get a lot of positive feedback from that, then they're starting to say, okay, so what else can we do? How can I get more data out of, or information out of that meeting? What about other areas? And that's where Copilot then pops in on their radar. But yeah, I would agree. Anybody else have any
It's
thoughts on
funny.
that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think I tend to work with large enterprise, and in that market, it's almost the exact opposite. They're very much aware that this is a competitive thing. And if they're not on the bleeding edge of AI and technology in general, that they're going to be behind their competitors, right? So there's this all in, let's embrace it. But the one thing that is the big sticking point is the transcription. The legal teams lose their mind. They go bonkers over it. They don't want everything and anything recorded and transcribed and kept forever. And so, I think that it's a balancing act as you get into this. I think I saw someone in the chat talk about readiness, and the readiness piece is really where we've spent most of our time with customers on just understanding all of the admin settings in the back end. What can I do to audit what's happening? How much control do I have over those things? And then especially on transcription, what options do I have? Can I use Copilot without transcription, or can I use it and not have it, do automated, where you have the one where it's not keeping the transcription file at the end, but you have the full use of Copilot and you can ask it questions during the meeting itself. So we really see the full gamut of things. But it's funny how it can be so different in some cases with our largest customers really being super cautious on transcription, but they're all in on everything else, including the agents and everything else. So it's definitely, it depends on the legal teams involved for sure, how this is going.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Thoughts, Max? You've been sitting back and listening to a lot of this stuff.
Well, of course, still interact with customers, but not nearly as much as the rest of you. So it is interesting to hear how some of this is being received at the organizational level. I'll echo, I've definitely heard a lot about the year-long commitment being a big problem. I sure hope that gets changed. There was like a snippet of news, I feel like a month ago, where I was like, oh gosh, it's getting changed, but it wasn't. It was just, now you can pay monthly with a year-long commitment. Yay. Close.
No cigar.
But yeah, the other thing that I'm seeing is people trying to find the right way to make this work for their industry. Coming from somebody who works exclusively with a single industry, for example, finding ways to make this work for teachers. Like, this doesn't feel built for teachers when there are, 100 different ChatGPT wrappers websites out there that you can use for $5 a month that are built for teachers, and same thing for legal and same thing for healthcare and so on and so forth. It's a big learning curve to figure out how to apply this to your industry. I think some of the stuff that we see in the prompt gallery, Copilot Lab, whatever it's called nowadays, helps with that, but not a ton.
That's specific to that industry.
Like, how do I? Okay, cool. I now know how to create a meeting agenda or how to summarize my meeting notes or, create whatever. But like, how do I use this in my actual daily workflow for where I work and my job responsibilities? That's a hard translation.
I think there's a lot there when we look at horizontals like legal, like marketing, etc. It's almost it's going to be table stakes at some point where Copilot is just part of the Office system. It's a default. You get it, right? And I think everybody's kind of we're trying to figure that out first as our initial piece of the deployment. Like, how do we use it at that level? But where I think we tend to see more value in that in-depth, like, wow, that customers are looking for is once you get into those role specifics and scenario specific co-pilots. That's where the agents become really powerful. You can do extensibility into the systems that relate to that specific role. I think that transition for many is a long way off because it's this journey, right? And you kind of have to start with that broader perspective and that broader use case. And it's going to take time for customers to work into those really specific use cases. But you've kind of, I liken it to working out, like it's hard the first day you do it, but you just got to go do it and you got to try something new. It's easier if you have a trainer to show you how to do the moves, right? Because then you do it the right way. But then over time, as you use it every day or you work out every day, right? It gets easier and easier. And then all of a sudden it's just part of your day and it's good for you, right? And you keep going back to it. And I feel like Copilot's very much that same way. And we have to take that journey. And unfortunately, because of the cost, I think companies just want to jump in and they demand this ROI right away. And so it's just difficult to be able to show the level of ROI that they're wanting. It's going to be there, right? But it takes time to get to where they want to go, which I think is it's an interesting conflict right now to see who of our customers are really buying in and taking their time and doing it right versus the ones that just they want it to just drop off that cliff and show them and be amazing from the get-go.
I think on top of that, it's each person finding their own little gem that is like, oh gosh, now I can't live without this. Like for me, it's Copilot and Stream. I love Copilot and Stream. It saves me so much time with Navigator on videos and things like that. And one of my coworkers, it's Copilot and Forms, which like you would think of as like that's like a one-off feature, but like being able to use that to create surveys for the meetings that she runs with various different customers, that's a big deal. So, but it takes just using it, Stephanie, to your point, for like months to figure out what is that thing that I can't live without.
Right, from an individual perspective, right? And then there's not just the individual, but then how does that department utilize it, or how does the organization use it? Then you have different levels as far as how it's going to demand and then what it's going to be used for. So go ahead.
Kind of back to that same champions approach, right?
Yep.
Is finding the people that have found successes and being able to share that within the org or within the department they're in or whatever.
Agreed.
The more of that happens, the better. But that's always been a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge.
But I like it. The fact is it's the same conversation we've been having for years.
Yep.
I mean, going back to the fact that Michelle said she started back a long time ago talking about being able to do calendar overlays, right? Just SharePoint in general, all of that stuff. You have your champions that know how that can be applied within their department or in their area, right? Same scenario. Now we're just talking about Copilot and how that works.
Yeah. The fact that we're talking about prompt engineers makes me crazy because that means that the interface isn't good enough yet to just understand what we're saying, right? I have to say it in a very specific way using very specific words to get what I need as an output. That's kind of what I hear when I hear prompt engineer. And that's fine for now. Like it's fine as I know this is where the industry is at. That term's got to go away, right? And I think a good stepping stone is things like you saw the prompt libraries, right? Those are going to be here for a little bit, and then they're going to fade out too. But those are maybe a little stepping stone in getting us away from that whole prompt engineer term.
Yeah, but I think that's overcomplicating things, right? Like I think that's a technical thing and a technical way to look at it. And if we approach it from the standpoint of how would you talk to a person? Would you tell a person 4 or 5 words and expect them to know? No, and we all know how to do that, right? Our problem is that we've been using Google for too many years, and we've construct the thing. If I need to ask a question, I have to construct it down and put it into a computer in 4 words, 5 words. And that's how we're programmed right now. But if I were to talk to you as a person and ask that question, would I ask it like I ask Google? Absolutely not. I would elaborate, I would give you detail. And if I didn't, then you would ask me a question and say, you would ask things. Well, Copilot's not going to ask you, but you could look at it and know it didn't give you the right stuff and go, oh, well, I didn't tell it, right? The very first, one of the earliest times I used Copilot, I told the Microsoft person I was working with, I said, this is great, but I wish it gave it to me in bullet points. I don't like the format. He was like, tell it to give you bullet points. And I was like, right. I didn't think about it because I'm not programmed to use the tool that way because I'm just used to the limitations in Office, right? So we also kind of have to rethink, like, we're making it too hard. Just talk to it like you're talking to a real assistant. And those things just they come naturally because you know what you want and you know what you need, you know what format you want. We just have to remember we're allowed to ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to your point is don't call it a prompt engineer if you're doing internal training. It's that virtual assistant. I mean, you want a specific output. This is how I want it. This is what I want you to include in it. It's a transition. Again, it's a change moment for people. To your point, I think even Tom Duff was actually saying something about people need to know that it's not a search engine. It's not. Right? There's more to it than that. Yeah, can it be? Yes, it can be, but that's not just the reason for doing it, right? And using it.
It's what we expected from Clippy how many years ago, right?
We got one of those into the recording. Good job. So any other thoughts as far as, actually, one of the things I was thinking about in the conversation that we were having, so between Richard and Stephanie, some of the things you were talking about, and thinking about your customers in readiness, right? So you're talking to these customers, they want to jump into it, they want to start spending the $30, and they want ROI right away, but they're not getting it right away, right? Is there that expectation that it's just going to happen right away, or is there things that we're going to have to do to really build them up to that point, and then when they're going to find that ROI or where they're going to get that huge benefit of it? Are you seeing that from your customers? Or are you? Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah. So we've been starting really small. So what we've been doing is we'll use Copilot Studio and agents and maybe just target, create a Copilot for searching a certain set of SharePoint documents, right? To kind of give them a sense of what the larger Copilot could do, but we start really small. And we hand it to groups of people. And once they start using it in that context, they immediately start saying, well, can I go search these other areas now, right? But obviously we haven't scoped it there yet. But the idea is we really want them to drive that usage in the small area. And if we do that a bunch of small times, then it's easy to just give them the larger license oftentimes, because it's just kind of a more natural progression. So we've done that a few times, and it's been fairly successful as like another middle ground.
Great. And are you finding that as that's progressing, what things are getting in the way of getting that final goal?
Cost is
is
always going to be it.
Cost.
Yeah. For a lot of our customers, there's always, someone mentioned it, like they turn it on and then they turn it back off. It feels kind of like the old Delve days, right? Everyone turned Delve on and it was like, oh my gosh, I can see everyone's documents everywhere. Oh no.
Not again.
Not again. It's like Groundhog's Day all over again. So we've definitely had that. That's from our perspective, we've definitely run into that again, right? So it's a similar thing, different conversation, different day kind of thing.
And are you finding that, organizations are really needing to beef up their, the DLP side of things, their labels, all those things to really make sure that the data is in perspective from the security side of things to be able to pull this off and make sure it's all right?
Yeah, for us, the one thing we've run into is a lot of duplication of data. They didn't realize that the same data was actually, they thought it was secure in one spot, and there's actually like 12 copies of it in all these other places that are not secured. But that one that they did, it's perfect.
That means it's really important, right? If it's out there 12 times.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, so
And 15 different versions.
Well, we won't get into that, but yeah,
No.
you know where it's going.
Yeah, we do.
You know, the information architect that I am, it warms my heart to finally see people caring about data governance, because we've been having this conversation for so many years.
Mhm.
I'm just so pleased. And I love, you know, that was actually my favorite announcement from Ignite. So Michelle, you took a little wind out of my sails. So you shared, but the SharePoint Advanced Management being included as part of the Copilot license is a game changer here, as far as I'm concerned. The oversharing reports are absolutely essential to those customers wanting to roll this out, to roll out Copilot, because that's the biggest issue that we have, are those oversharing. You look at SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, every time you hit that share with everyone button and a bunch of people click on that link, right? Those are the things that are hitting our customers, and the larger you are, the more risk you have, of course, with the number of files. But we had a customer who thought they would go do Copilot by themselves, didn't ask for any assistance, and they had C-level salary exposed because it was sitting in a spreadsheet on someone's OneDrive that was too openly shared. So I think that it's a game changer to have SharePoint Advanced Management as part of that Copilot license, and you'll be able to not only do this like one-time sweep before you release Copilot, but remembering that this is an ongoing thing. The second that you clean up all your files, the next day somebody starts and you know, shares something they shouldn't share, and et cetera. So it's this ongoing ability to get in there and administer at you know, a pretty detailed level, making sure that things are not overshared in the environment. And, you know, people that have been in the organization for how many years, like it's years and years and years of oversharing piled on top of each other. So I just think I'm excited to see that. You know, I also noticed it's slightly different but similar in the new Data Security Posture Management, or DSPM, for AI. They also have data governance reporting over there as well. I don't know if they're the same or different or what, but there's definitely a big emphasis on this coming from Microsoft, and now to have it included is just a game changer.
It's about
Yeah,
time
so
that people woke up to this.
Agreed.
Like, come on.
Again.
Like, yeah, right. Again,
To that point.
Dell fiasco, first time the amount of, and I'm sure nobody here is in this situation, but I'm sure you've worked with people who are, the amount of people who they turn on Copilot and all this stuff is being overshared, and they're, oh God, we got to turn off Copilot. And then all of a sudden the sense of urgency is gone. It's like, you opened a Band-Aid, you saw your wound is infected, you just put it back on. That's your solution. So, but I'm glad to see a lot of people are fixing the oversharing.
Yeah.
Which that means though is that it's not just one group really focusing on helping to make Copilot effective. We're talking about now we're expanding it. Now security has to be involved. Now all these different aspects of IT has to be involved. To do it, realistically, there's not a lot of technical work from a just how do you use it perspective, but more from a, hey, how do we make sure everything's ready before you get to that next step? And then when you get to that next step, we're talking about all these interconnections that we have with all our systems, and then you're ready for that to be successful. But it's an all IT type scenario, which I like the fact that they're working on that way.
You know, I wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier too, because we look at this as such an IT-centric deployment when we push software, and I think this is really the first time we've seen a software that demands change enablement in a big way. Even at the smaller companies, I think we think of change enablement as being something that large organizations have the benefit of doing during a big change. And Copilot's something that no matter what size organization you are, I think the change enablement piece is so important, because someone posted a really good article. It was the 11 by 11 one. It was in the chat. The 11 by 11 tipping point. If you go, thank you, Tom. It looks like Tom dropped that in there. And and read that article, because the 11 by 11 tipping point talks about how when you deploy Copilot, there's this spike, people are excited, they use it, and then it drops off, and it's the novelty wears off. And it's the change enablement that makes the difference in continuing forward. during that time frame. And we know that it takes about 3 months. And again, you know, you go back to that working out scenario, it takes that much time for you to develop that new habit. And it's the change enablement. And for us, what does change enablement mean, right? It could be office hours where you can talk to each other. It could be Viva Engage, where you share ideas, like the one that Michelle just dropped into the chat, like, hey, try this. And it's about creating activities that remind them. We have people put Post-it notes on their monitor, right, to remind them to use Copilot. It's not part of that daily process until you build that muscle. So all of those things are so important to being able to use Copilot effectively. So I think being so IT centric for so long with our software, we really need to look at the softer side of this. And it is worth the time and effort in bringing if you have a change team, bring them in. If you have internal communications, bring them in too. But if you don't have those things, maybe think about who you can have work on some of those softer things, like the Viva Engage community, or like running office hours, because they've been super impactful for us internally and for our customers too.
Agreed. Yeah.
I
Richard,
think the small,
Go ahead.
medium-sized companies probably are still more into that. Like they'll call it the Champions program, right? It's they're doing a lot of the same stuff as a change org is going to. They're just not calling it that, or maybe they're starting to call it that. But it's in my, I guess from my perspective, it's the capturing of successes and then sharing those successes, and you put another element of understanding the business enough to know which ones resonate, right? So like we just got past the end of year review cycle for many organizations, and one thing that I saw that was pretty interesting and I thought pretty cool was that it was an org that was basically saying, all right, for all the managers that are doing your year-end evaluations, here's how you should be using AI. You know, it's not Microsoft specific. It was specific to their organization, but it was, you know, do X, Y, and try doing X, Y, and Z. And it's not they weren't encouraging them to dump stuff into this bin, crank it out, and then, you know, hand that to their employees. But it was, hey, here's where you can do a lot of the work, and then use that and refine it, and that's much quicker than you writing something from scratch. And that resonated with basically management at all levels, because they all had to go through that process, and it's a pain point for all of them. So that ended up being a really cool experience for that organization. Just one example.
Yeah, I know that's something that we're encouraged internally here at Microsoft to do, that kind of stuff as well, finding those types of scenarios where then we can utilize and see how it's going to help us in whatever, you know, that happens to be, whether it be reviews or if it's something else specific to your part of the organization specifically. But having that stakeholder on the top saying, hey, we're going to do this, this is how you do it, have our information site that gets that information on how best to do that is always helpful, and having those champions are going to be a great way to do it in those scenarios for sure.
Yep.
So I know we've been talking a lot about Copilot, and if Michelle's on there, let's see how many times we've said that word now at this point. And I know that Max mentioned something that wasn't Copilot related. I think, Richard, you also said anything that was not Copilot related that you thought was very interesting, maybe side benefit of that, but was there any other announcements out there that you thought was, wow, okay, yeah, this should get a little bit sorry. Pete is Mr. Microsoft Places, and he threw that into the chat. So,
of course.
Yeah, exactly. But is there any other announcements that you thought were like big ones that kind of probably didn't get as much attention just because a Copilot was a big part of it?
For me, I'm a Teams, I'm a voice guy from the background. So the two that jumped out to me, number one is the email verification for participants to join Teams meetings. I get asked this all the time. Like, it is a constant ask. So to be able to go in, set on your team that you require some sort of one-time password so that not any random person can join your meeting and validate them is absolutely huge for
Agreed. Yeah.
the organizations that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. This is just like one of those, I said it before, small pain point that's been there for a long time, finally resolved, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
The other one, and it's so tiny, it's crazy, but it's around voice specifically. The two things: one, phones and having sidecars. So the old push button, I want to be able to transfer to extension 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for that operator, and she doesn't have to click, or he doesn't have to click 18 different things to transfer a phone call. It's going to be fantastic for them. And the second one was the delayed ringing on simultaneous ring. This was like a core feature in Skype for Business that, I kid you not, I get asked all the time about. So seeing it back, hashtag feature parody. We're almost there.
Oh yeah, and Skype
we're almost there. We're almost
it's been
there.
gone for a while, right?
It has. Well, I mean, I've got some organizations that are still on it, but you know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the line key piece. That was a long time coming as well. The buttons were there, the manufacturers are there, we weren't there. And finally, being able to set that up, I think I have a lot of customers personally that were waiting for that to be able to do whatever use case that they had specifically. So I would agree with you. I think those are two, especially on the voice side. I missed, because of everything else, I missed the email verification for meetings. I think that's great, especially for some of those very high important meetings that you want to control what's going on. I think that's awesome. Stephanie, do you have anything outside of the Copilot realm that you thought were big?
The Windows 365 link. The idea that we have this little box that you can ship out. It's not password or anything you have to worry about. And, we talk a lot about making the onboarding process easier for new hires and things like that. And I think when you think about that whole process of like setting up a laptop for someone to log into and how long that takes, and then shipping it out and receiving the laptop and the pain it is to set that up, like just ship them this little device and they can log right into their cloud device. I feel like it'll be really impactful to the new hire process and the whole realm of like managing laptops and all of that. Doesn't help folks like me who travel. I'm going to need a laptop for a while. But I think in general, it'll be a really interesting thing to see how that all plays out.
Agreed. Wes, any thoughts?
I guess I've got two at the top of my head, and one of them is still Copilot related. Obviously, it's the agent builder in Power Apps. So it's going to give us some contextual controls there that are, I think, pretty interesting looking. I mean, there's a lot to dig into there yet, but that was one that piqued my interest when I saw it talked about. The other one is, I think, the continuing maturity of Loop. It still has to find its place, I think, because we've got a lot of overlap from other Microsoft products. I think there needs to be some clarity there. It's a common Microsoft problem of what to use when and having overlap. So I think that's still a problem. But I mean, they talked about it a lot more, which was encouraging, and we're seeing work being done in it more. So, and it's a cool tool. I mean, those are all things that are kind of fun about it. So I was pretty excited about that, to see it keep going. We'll have to see where it lands. Yeah, there you go. Loop versus OneNote versus Notion, right? Because that's kind of the tool they're going after. And Notion just opened up APIs into other tools, so now we're going to be able to suck in Microsoft content into Notion. That's going to be a pretty competitive piece. So yeah, but that's something I like a lot.
Yeah. And Maddie wants your answer, Rich.
Isn't the answer always whatever meets your needs? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I have to say though, now that Loop is part of that, you can edit in pages in Copilot. I actually use Loop now, because now it's all right there. And I'm, when I'm ideating over something, it is kind of convenient to not have to take that content out and port it into a Word document or something. So I use it almost entirely for that, and that's it.
Yeah. Loop versus OneNote is only the beginning. Then you get into Loop versus Word and Loop versus Excel. Like, it's just its own.
Yeah. No, I mean, most people haven't gotten that far to try to differentiate. I mean,
We're not trying to start a fight, Max. Come on.
Yeah.
So, Max, did you have any other thoughts on the topic of necessarily non-Copilot, but big announcements you thought that probably were underrated?
I got two.
Nice.
One would be for more the IT folks here, the org messages that you can send out in Microsoft products now. So if you missed this, it went GA at Ignite, it went preview, I think like May or something. But basically through a lot of the services where Microsoft pushes out what may be annoying messages to your end users in products, but may be helpful depending on the situation, you can now push out your own messaging through some of those services as well. It's pretty limited still. It's not like everywhere, but allowing a customer to take advantage of those same services is an important advancement, in my opinion. Like, nobody reads your email, right? Trying to get the messaging out. We have a Viva product literally dedicated to trying to get people to read your comms, and it's a good one. But like another service is always better. The other thing, I think this was either I missed it at Ignite or it was only announced shortly after, is the unification of Stream and Clipchamp, which is going to be really interesting to see play out. I don't have any more info than you do on this one. It's just Clipchamp is pretty powerful. It's been interesting seeing it be more integrated into M365, and it's now GA with all your M365 plans. Yippee! But seeing the video consumption, like the playback and the editing, come together it'll be interesting. I love Clipchamp because it feels like my baby Windows Movie Maker is back in another form. So it's kind of nice to see that progressing.
And we liked Movie Maker for a while.
I loved Movie Maker. I may or may not have held on to that executable file for long after they pulled it off the download sites.
Still probably on a laptop somewhere. So Eileen was asking about that first thing you mentioned, Max, and if you can find something on it and throw that a link in there to talk about it. I did remember seeing that as well, and I think I want to say there was a message center post about it. Thank you. That's what it was. Organizational messages.
So is that stepping into the Visual SP in the OSIPS tool? Kind of sounds like it.
No, I think this is actually in Team or in Office 365 admin as part of that. So maybe they took some of what he was doing and moved it in. That's a good point. But I think that's very valuable from an end user change management adoption side of conversation. Just another tool you can use to be able to get that information out. And again, to Max's point, it's not an email. It's that little pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner that you're doing something all of a sudden. You have to restart Windows. Well, now this time it's, hey, by the way, this is coming, right? So you really notice those types of announcements when they come out.
You can never communicate changes too many places. Like,
agreed.
If we tell people to put posters up in the bathrooms, we might as well do this.
Yeah.
That might be over the bounds right there.
You never know. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to the question in the chat, I don't believe it's intended in any way to replace Amplify. Yeah. Amplify is really meant to push to like you think about more formal communications that are going to stay there. So you have like a news article in SharePoint, or it goes into Viva Engage to be posted for a lengthy period of time for a large group of people. This is more of like that pop-up, like toast notification. At least that's my understanding. It's more of a point in time, and then you exit out and it like disappears and goes away. Right. So I see this being quite a bit different than what Amplify is.
Two different audiences, organizational wise versus change management. One time, point in time type scenario. Absolutely. Yeah. And audience, if you have any other questions for these guys, please pop a couple of them in there too. I know you're throwing some things in there. That's great. But, anything else that you guys want to ask of these guys, raise your hand. I would love to have you guys also come off and ask the questions directly to the panel. I think that's a great opportunity to be able to get some some good insights as well as we continue on. So if you have anybody wants have a question, please raise your hand first, and then we'll come off mute and ask that question on the panel. Any takers yet? They're like, no, that's just Wes.
Yeah, just me rambling.
Well, there was one earlier in the chat, almost towards the beginning. I remember asking about scale as it relates to agents. Now that we have this ability to jump in and everybody can create an agent kind of thing. I do think that it feels like it would be like we're creating a lot of space junk when we're doing that. But it's actually pretty lightweight. Like if you go out to a SharePoint library and you create an agent on that library, it's creating this really little file. It's a .agent file. It actually sits in the document library itself. So it's not, I mean, I definitely agree. Like it's something you should keep an eye on, think about governance for. But in terms of how much stuff it's creating, it's actually very lightweight. So, I don't know that it's a big concern, but something that I'm hopeful, Microsoft will come back and say, oh yeah, you'll just run this like retention policy and look for everything with the .agent or whatever, and then you'll be able to do cleanup if it's not used. I hope that's where we're headed. But for the moment, at least it doesn't seem to be overly intrusive in terms of size or what, it's not generating a bunch of stuff. It's just this one little file.
I'd be willing to bet with agents, it's still V1, right? It's still super early. That's going to evolve quite a bit, because it's still limited to literally like 20 items when you're setting the scope up. I think that'll change, right? So it can be 20 documents or 20 sites, right? So that there's no way that's going to be the way that it works long term. So I mean, yeah, it's going to change. I think it's a great step forward though, because it's the whole, we're starting with AI, we're starting with Copilot, and the scope is everything that your organization has, right? To let's start going down to smaller scopes. So I think that's just the fact that it's saying, hey, we want to recognize that you need to look at a smaller thing is wonderful. Yeah.
Well, and if you take the approach that Richard was saying too, is if that's your first level of adoption, going down that route and having very, very structured agents that are set up that way with this information, you probably will have a lot of those eventually out there, and then you can start cleaning up as you progress to something bigger, right? But I think that's a great first step, and that's a good thing to know. Thank you, Stephanie, on that.
I think
Tom.
A question. Yeah.
Yes, Tom.
Yes, Tom's going to ask a question here. Tom's also going to show off his ignorance.
That's
so and that's easy. That happens all the time. So the SharePoint Advanced Management, SAM, I was always under the impression, and I know virtually nothing about it, but this was something you bought for your entire corporation. And it was like, I bought this, it's costing me this amount. But then when they said, okay, now if you have Copilot, you have SAM. I'm like, okay, but Copilot is being rolled out as an individual thing. Is SAM an individual thing, or is SAM still an overall, or is it like, hey, you've got at least X number of Copilot licenses, we'll throw SAM at you? Can you explain that a little bit to me? Because I'm not understanding how that works. And the guy in our organization who's kind of doing this stuff, he's like, yeah, that's confusing. So
my understanding, and Microsoft corrects me if I'm wrong here, maybe earmuffs, my understanding is that you only need to buy one Copilot license and you get the full SAM functionality for all of your users.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the word on the street between us.
That's very encouraging. He'll love that, because he was like, I love the idea of SAM. We're never going to be able to buy it or afford it. We're never going to put the money out there. We can afford it. We're not going to put the money out there for it. So I think if that's now available to say, start looking at oversharing, start doing this, start doing that, and having it apply to our entire organization with the 400 licenses, 300 licenses, whatever we have, that makes a huge difference. So thanks. I'll pass that along and we'll see where we go with that.
As I say, if we're putting earmuffs on, if you want another great example of this,
please do.
Yeah, not that I'm trying to prevent you from buying licenses or anything, but On the team side, there are a bunch of premium only reports, inactive teams, all these kind of things. Same scenario. If you have one team's premium license anywhere in your org, you have access to all of those reports.
And where
Yeah,
are you
from a
finding
back-end
these
perspective.
reports at?
It would be in
They're
the Teams Admin Center.
Teams
Teams
Admin
Admin
Center.
Center?
Yep, under usage reports.
Mhm.
I would
Okay,
show
because
you.
that's another thing we're starting to look at is starting to get rid of the SharePoint sites that have been there forever. Because when Tom did the, on-prem to online, it's like, yeah, he got rid of 1,200 sites because they were not being used anymore. We haven't had that kind of same follow-up on team sites. It's like, well, you've got ShareGate, yeah, but then we're talking BAs and all this kind of stuff, and that's just not happening to allow a third-party vendor to go in and say, yeah, we'll track that stuff for you. So having that as part of the Microsoft thing makes a huge difference. So thank you for that. I did not know.
Yep, there's a handful of reports there, and I don't know the timing. I'm sure it's in the admin center somewhere, and I super didn't violate an NDA by saying that they're coming soon. But there's definitely stuff coming someday in the future.
We never had this conversation, and I'm sure
specific.
Copilot just kind of went blah 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 blah, and just will not look at it in
Right.
any of the transcript here.
Say the
Can I
word
tell you,
earmuff.
that's a feature enhancement that I would like. Where you just tell Copilot earmuffs.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Yep.
listen,
That would
Ignore
be
the
great.
next
And then you
5
just
seconds
say-
of conversation.
Yes.
Yes, redact the following.
Redacting in Copilot. There we go. That's the new thing that
It's
we
called
need.
turn off transcript.
Yeah.
You got another
Perfect.
question out
Thanks,
there.
Tom. Yes, we do. Christine, you want to come off mute?
Yes, hi, this is Christine Susty. Hi, Michelle. I don't know if you're still there. But just tagging on to the SAM question, I'm just wondering if we know, I was trying to take that screenshot when Michelle brought up the SAM for the, licensing if you have Copilot. Do we know if it's all the pieces of SAM or is it just the data governance piece of it? Just the permissions report, or do we know if it's all the pieces of SAM? Because there's, various pieces
There's a
to
lot
it.
to SAM. Yeah, there's a lot to SAM specifically. That's a good question. I don't know if Michelle, if you're still on, if you have that information or if anybody else. We may have to follow up Christine on that.
Okay, and I can follow up with Michelle as well. That's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that might be a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Actually,
Christine, yeah, if you look in the chat, I put the screenshots and we had a couple different caveats to what you all get. Take a look there, and if not, then we can take it offline too.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
We did have a question online. Melissa was asking about non-Copilot question, if you can speak to it. Bookings versus virtual appointment.
I can take that one.
All right.
So think of virtual appointments as the upgrade paid version of bookings, because
Yep.
bookings is included with your M365 license. I say included, not free, right? It's
Yep.
included. So when you set up your bookings page, you can go out there and set it up, but it's very limited, right? So when you set up your page, you can choose from one of like 8 banner photos, right? And you can't really do a whole lot with the look and feel of the layout of the page. So if you say to me, well, this bookings page is great. If you're not familiar what it is, it's the ability to set up a page for people outside your company to come in and book time with you on your calendar. So they can see you're free busy essentially, but they, you can set up hours. So they can only book from like 12 to 5 or something like that, right? So it's a very structured way of sharing your calendar with an external party. So when you set that page up, it's very limited in terms of how you can customize how it looks and feels. For example, is one of the things. But with virtual appointments, if you're like, I want my company brand, it needs to have our colors, it needs to have our logo. That's when you need to upgrade from that included bookings license to virtual appointments. So that's just one of the features. I'm sure there's plenty of others, but they are entirely different, and think of virtual appointment as an upgrade to bookings. I don't know if anybody has more details on what else virtual appointments does, but I know that was the sticking point for one of my customers, was they were like, bookings is amazing. Why can't I customize my landing page? Well, that's why, right? So I know that one for a fact, but I don't know if the rest of you know the other features, but.
Well, number one, it's a Teams premium. license for the virtual appointment, right? So that's all encompassing of a lot of different things, and premium is virtual appointments is part of that, right? You get things like SMS as part of that. So if you sign up for a meeting with myself, then you'll get an SMS reminder, hey, this is when you have that meeting, and just before it, hey, don't forget your meeting, those types of things, and that automatically sets up the meeting for you. I have the ability to do documents through that if I want to. Think of it as like, for the longest time, like during COVID, that we had to have virtual appointment type things, and that whole industry sprung up, really, that whole piece sprung up at that point. Richard, do you want to throw anything else in there? Because I know you've talked about that in the past.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say, the question I always get asked is a follow-up, like I have the same description that Stephanie gave. And then everyone goes, well, isn't that the same description you gave us when you were talking about, like, in Teams, you had live events, and then you told us to do webinars, and live events would never go away, but now it is going away.
Yeah.
Is bookings going to go away? And, like, I haven't heard anything that it is, right? Like, at least with live events, there's always the rumor. So that was all I was going to say. Like, it seems safe to use.
Yeah. And thanks, Max, for getting a little bit more detail on the out of the box versus what you get with the premium side of things. As always, there's always going to be different tiers on that. So yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's still features coming. Every once in a while in the message center, I will still see virtual appointments getting new features over the last year or so. So
yeah, I know nothing. I'm going to be really clear. I know nothing. But I would use virtual appointments if just seems sick. If you haven't started using bookings,
right? If you're new, I would go use virtual appointments 100%.
But if you're using bookings today, if you see features that are virtual appointments that you like, then a move over makes sense. If not, I wouldn't start any sort of migration until you hear from Microsoft.
Well, I do think there's a cost, though, right? To the virtual appointments, there's a cost where there's not a cost to bookings.
I thought there was a free tier for virtual appointments and a premium tier.
Oh, okay.
Or licensing.
That's the rule, isn't it? If there's a feature you don't have, it's in the paid version. Yeah.
Yep. I will confirm that, Max. I double check, but I didn't remember how much of that was, if there was much from a free side of things versus it's all part of premium. If I thought that's what it was, but let me double check. Yeah, Pete, nice one. Is there a Copilot agent for licensing? Not yet. But,
that's an announcement we missed.
Yes.
We didn't talk about that, did we? There's Copilot for M365 admin.
Yes,
so yes, there is.
They did talk about that.
Yes.
That's a great thing. Well, but I don't know if it's going to talk about
licensing. But it's just M365.
Right.
Well, but
I'm sure it would never get a licensing question wrong.
It's supposed to help with licensing. It specifically gave that in the bullet points of the description that it will help you streamline your licensing costs. So it says.
No, I'm pessimistic.
I would be
do you want,
pessimistic.
At risk of getting fired, do you want an agent built by the company that wants you to buy more licensing that will explain the licensing to you?
There's a trust but verify component here too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But I do know that it's not just about licensing, right? It's also about managing your users and being able to do some policies and things like that through Copilot, admin Copilot, to help out with that. So yes.
Here's the answer, by the way. There is basic stuff.
Okay. Good to know.
There's the link there too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions that we have? Kind of like a used car salesman. Yep. For sure. All right. So, what, Michelle, you have a question?
Yes, of course. I always have a question.
All right. Okay.
All right. My question is just for everybody on the panel, who went in person and what was the experience like for you? And then if you didn't go in person, did you have a watch party or did you just try to consume it at night watching popcorn, or how did you kind of experience Ignite this year?
Well, I was in person.
Yeah.
I was there on work duty, so you would have found me in my bright orange pullover, as we do at Avalon. You couldn't miss me. I could have flagged on an airplane. we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of client meetings. I did some sessions. I definitely did a lot of laps around the expo hall, chatting with all of the different vendors. And I think that's one of the biggest things, right? You can catch all the sessions online. So I spend a lot of my time in person with vendors, looking at, who's doing what. Some really interesting third-party tools that are popping up in and around AI in general. So I had a lot of fun getting to know new folks and talking to vendors about what their products do, and of course meeting with Microsoft here and there. So I had a very good time, happily exhausted by the end of that week for sure.
I bet.
I mean, I was there, but I was not an attendee of Ignite, so I may have just got on the floor and did my MVP things and ran away. So,
which is not bad.
Right.
But you obviously took in some of the sessions, probably online.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a bunch of MVPs who did not attend.
Participate.
We got together and watched them together for sure.
But they use way less MVPs these days than they used to.
Agreed.
I feel like, yeah.
Yep, I would agree. And Wes, you were watching online this year?
I was watching online. I was not there. I was still reeling from the conference the week before, having to deal with all the changes Microsoft was putting in place while we were trying to present. So, as is typical for the week before a big Microsoft event. But yeah. I was watching on demand. I was talking to lots of people. I highly, highly recommend people go to the on-demand site because you can see tons and tons of the content that was there. But yeah, there you have it.
Max,
I also did not go in person.
Okay.
I have little kids at home and decided it wasn't worth the favors I would have to owe to go there in person. But I was watched online. I flagged the sessions ahead of time that looked interesting to me, and still watching sessions here and there as people point out, oh, hey, did you catch that? And for what it's worth, like if there were things that we all talked about today that you're like, oh, that's interesting. There was a session on it. Whatever it was, there was a session on it. Might be worth watching.
Yeah, and if there is any one or two sessions that you think were really valuable, if you have an opportunity, throw it into the chat. I think that would be good for people to be able to go out there and register and take a look at that. I know from a Teams phone side of things, the Teams All Up session was really good on that and talked a lot about the things that Richard and I are really into, not only on the phone side of things, but also on the devices side of things and rooms and what's going on with there and new partners that are coming in, new features that are coming. And then the other one I know, and I don't think there was an actual session on it, but the one that Pete's all about is the fact that Places was another big one. But I don't think we actually had a session that talked about Places, which was unfortunate. But
there were no Places sessions?
I didn't see anything.
And dig into the depending on how you learn, dig into the book of news, and usually at the end of each section, there's a link to blog posts that are going to get you deeper into all of those topics. So there is a ton of content.
I think they even have links to sessions that now have the recordings in that book news.
Oh, that'll be good. All right. So with that, is there any, and I think it looks like there's no more questions, right, everybody? Just making sure that we don't have any other questions out there. What are kind of some of the final parting thoughts that you guys have after the whole Ignite thing and some of the discussions that we've been having here that you want everybody to know once we leave for today? I give you 30 seconds to think. Anybody want to start?
I'll throw 2 cents in. Stephanie kind of alluded to this before too, and I think that the importance of all the non-tech stuff, of all the soft skills and just change management or the other names for the change stuff that we're doing, right? All of that stuff is so important right now. It's more important than ever just because stuff is changing so fast. And the good thing is Microsoft is giving us tools to help manage those. Other organizations are too, but it's from what I'm seeing, at least from what I'm the folks I'm talking to and the topics I'm talking to them about, it's we're definitely still talking about tech in those conversations, but so much of it is how do I get this to my people and how do I help them and how do I enable them? And it's you got to balance the tech with the non-tech. There's just a lot of work to do.
Agreed. Anybody else?
Gosh, I guess my thoughts are, I know there's a lot coming at everyone right now. It's a lot to take in. Do take your time and go through this content though, because when you look at where things are headed in the future, if you're in IT, you're in this space at all, AI is where it's going to be. So I think it's beneficial for you and your career and your company to lean in and learn these things, even if you're not quite hands-on yet. I know it's going to be a little bit before everybody gets into Copilot, but I do think it's an important foundational piece of where tech is headed. So do take the time and go through these sessions because they are really, really good. And who knows, when it does hit your organization, maybe you can be the first one to get hands-on license and be, a champion within your own organization.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, that do what's right for your organization. Don't feel like you have to turn everything on day one. And the biggest thing I just keep telling organizations, have a plan to be able to evaluate success. Just have an idea of what you want to get on the far side so you have something to measure. Because without it, it's really hard.
Agreed. Max, anything?
At the risk of sounding like a corporate drone, it's worth trying. Copilot. Like make sure that you've got your data governance in place, of course. And I wish that there was a monthly option, and I wasn't telling you to go shell out $360, but like it's worth kicking the tires and seeing what's there, because you'll hear people talk about how well it works or how well it doesn't work and what's there and what isn't, but until you really try it out for yourself in your own organization's environment with a persona or two, you won't really have a sense for where it is in terms of readiness for you and where you are in terms of readiness for it.
Don't limit those people that are trying the tech to just IT.
I was going to just say the same thing.
Yes.
You're the worst test people. I'm dead serious.
Absolutely. And that's where I've seen people get so frustrated with it. I'm like, you gotta let other people use it. I mean, guide them and be there with them, but like just let some of the other people in. That's where the benefit is, right? IT is, they need to see it from the turning it on and managing it. And when there's a couple of those special folks that actually can talk to the business and the tech, it's let them use it too, but don't limit it to just IT. That is going to be a huge mistake.
Specifically, C-level IT folks, that's even a worse collection of people. I think we had an organization, they shut it down completely because the CEO was like, I tried and I didn't think it was useful, and just was like, no one gets it. I'm like, you're the last person.
You can't give it to any of them without someone to sit right next to them for a while, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, and I think, Stephanie, you were talking about that earlier on. You got to get it out of IT. I mean, the stakeholders are going to be in the business side of things, especially because those are the ones who are really close to those business processes that can benefit from utilizing those tools. And I think we've been saying that for a long time, but I think now it's really finally settling in with some of these organizations that, it can't be just IT.
And the pushback I hear, not pushback, but I think fear, I hear all the time when I say this to IT admins, is they don't want to open that Pandora's box potentially, right? Like, so you want me to just basically, just let this loose on a handful of people. It's not that scary.
But it's a culture shift. I mean, it's a lot of.
For sure.
You hear, AI falls fully under the umbrella of the computer people, right? And it's at least from the perceptions perspective, and it's got to change, right? It's got to be the business side, and it's got to be people that can bridge bridge those two groups to be able to talk about how to use it in the org, way beyond computers. So yeah.
All right.